Okay, the chair lays out House Bill 3670 and recognizes Representative Plesa to explain the bill. The chair offers a committee substitute.
Thank you, Chairman, Vice Chair, and members of this esteemed committee. I am honored to have the pleasure of serving alongside of each of you and excited to lay out House Bill 3670 before you today. Private activity bonds are a critical financing tool for commercial rental housing projects throughout the state. The interest of these bonds is exempt from federal income taxation, which allows lenders to offer a lower interest rate. Texas is the only state that requires full funding of private activity bonds at closing rather than a partial funding as needed during construction. In a typical construction project, a conventional loan would be drawn down as needed to pay contractors for the work that they have completed and suppliers for the materials that they've supplied. Partial funding of private activity bonds is allowed in other states because interest is paid only on the amount funded, thereby making the loan less costly and more efficient, allowing more of the bond proceeds to be used for actual construction costs. In Texas, the definition of closing currently requires full payment of the bond. House Bill 3670 defines closing as delivery of a bond in exchange for payment that may include partial payment and incremental funding provided that no less than 10% of the required payment must be funded at the time of closing. This definition will align Texas with other states in allowing partial funding of private activity bonds and reduce unnecessary interest expenses while protecting lenders. Borrowers will benefit from lower interest rates, which will allow more bond proceeds to be utilized for construction costs rather than financing costs. This will be a benefit for Texas because more housing infrastructure will be generated with the interest savings to accommodate the state's growing population. Members, I'm happy to share that there is zero opposition to this bill and zero fiscal impact to the state, a positive fiscal impact to private activity bond borrowers and developers. Last session, this bill was previously filed by former State Representative Scott Sanford and was voted out of this committee unanimously and in the House and Senate. It was passed on local and consent. Unfortunately, it ran out of time. Representative Frazier and I represents part of former Representative Sanford's old district, and I am grateful to Representative Sanford for starting this work, with Representative Frazier for joint authoring this bill, Representative Bryan and Vice Chair Lambert as well for being my joint authors on this bill. We have some expert witnesses here, and with that, I reserve my right to close.
Okay, thank you. Members, any questions? Okay, if there are further questions, we'll proceed to the testimony. Chair calls Samson Babalola, testifying for self and ITEX Group, and you are testifying for the bill. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairman and Vice Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Samson Babalola. I am a development director for the ITEX Group, which is a affordable housing development company based in Port Arthur, but also has an office in Houston, Texas. I'm speaking in support of House Bill 3670. ITEX specializes in the development of affordable housing. In any given year, we can have about 5 to 7 projects that are going through the development pipeline to get to a closing. When it comes to utilizing bond financing, in the development of affordable housing, the state of Texas, as the representative already mentioned, requires that you draw down 100% of the bonds at closing. And so this is an issue typically because bond allocations are around 40 million for these affordable housing developments. And so at closing, if I have a deal where I got an allocation of 30 million, from day one at closing, I'm paying interest on 30 million. Even though I don't need all that money at that time. So House Bill 3670, as you all already know, seeks to change that requirement so that we can only draw down essentially what is needed, no less than 10%. This will reduce the amount of interest paid during construction period and also reduce overall financing fees and overall project costs. Thank you for the time and opportunity. Take any questions.
Thank you, sir. Members, any questions? Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
Chairman calls Bobkin Simonians, Yes, thank you, Mr. Simonians. I see, I have you testifying for yourself, and you are for the bill. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Thank you, sir. Proceed.
Mr. Chairman, members of committee, thank you for this opportunity to be here. I was here last year as well and testified for changing the rule, as Texas is the only state in the country, as mentioned earlier, that forces developers to issue the bond for the full amount, pay interest for the full amount, even though it takes about 12 months to 24 months to spend the money. Let's take an example of a $20 million project at a 5% rate of interest. The change that we are proposing here, or you are proposing here, is going to save the development about $500,000 to $800,000. At a time where the construction cost has increased, at the time that the interest rates have gone up, this is a welcome opportunity to promote affordable housing. Otherwise, we are going to be in constraint to meet the budget and develop new affordable housing projects. So I'm speaking in full support of 3670. It's long overdue, and it would help the state to provide more affordable housing that is so badly needed. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, sir. Members, are there any questions? Thank you, sir. Is there anyone else who wishes to testify on, for, or against House Bill 3670? If not, the chair recognizes Representative Plesa to close on the bill.
Thank you, Chairman and Vice Chair and members, for considering this important legislation that will benefit all of our districts and all the industry partners involved with these important projects. As I mentioned, this bill was sent to local and consent calendar unanimously last session, and I ask that you favorably consider this legislation and send it to local and consent this session. And with that, I close.
Thank you, Representative Plesa. The committee substitute is withdrawn. If there is no If there is no objection, the bill will be left pending.